Vineyard.
Somos Viña.
We are Vineyard.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. This week, we're launching a new mini-series called Leadership Under Pressure. And today we'll hear from our National Director, Jay Pathak, along with Danielle Pathak, Associate National Director for Pastoral Health. Let's listen in.
So hi, Danielle.
Hi, Jay.
Good to be together. We're going to talk. We're in our backyard, which is nice sunny fall day in Colorado. And we're setting up this next series of podcasts where we're going to be talking to all kinds of experts on resiliency and managing crisis and some of the different emotional and physical pressures, really any pressure that encounters pastors and leaders, but really anybody, I think, is what we're going to be looking at. We got Jim Wilder and Michael Cusick and I don't know, a whole bunch of people. Chuck DeGroat, some of you would know that guy's name. Anyway, so that'll be fun. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the work that you've been doing, and it kind of will run parallel to a lot of these conversations because you've been working hard to build a bunch of resources and ways for leaders, pastors, churches to be able to help folks in all kinds of areas of pastoral health and really just overall health. Maybe that's what we could call you, just A&D of health.
Health. Oh, goodness.
Personal
a lot
health.
Of pressure.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. That's because it isn't just relating to pastors and leaders. That's I think why.
I know, it's kind of human health.
Human health. That's what I'm saying. Health. Just health. So tell me about, you did a set of assessments, you did some research within the Vineyard, outside the Vineyard, that moved you toward some of this work, some of the stuff that you're doing, which we're going to talk through a bunch right now. But talk a little bit about how you went about assessing kind of what's going on in the Vineyard by way of personal and pastoral health.
Well, first of all, I grab any type of research that I can find coming out in general.
Yeah.
Anything that has pastor or ministry leader attached to it, I read it, I try to learn from it, and whether it be from well-known organizations or even, smaller kind of research, publications that come out, I think we're all seeing that there is a major crisis in the way that we're thinking about the wellness as people engage in pastoral ministry. And it's one thing just to know about the different levels of weakness or vulnerabilities that ministry leaders can encounter, especially in today's culture. But it's another thing to recognize the very clear ways to move forward to be able to help support ministry leaders and their families and their marriages. So for me, it's been definitely a two-pronged approach. And I felt like it was very, very, very interesting and very necessary to have personal data on specifically the Vineyard, on our
well, yeah, if you're going to work with
exactly,
a Vineyard,
on our family.
So talk about that. How did you actually do the work to figure out where the Vineyard's at?
Yeah, it took me a minute to try to find a working assessment that was validated, professional. We worked a deal last year with an organization called Vitalization Wellness, and they had it's probably about they measure 8 different places of health within a human, everything from financial health to physical health and organizational, emotional, all the things.
So it's not just for leaders necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, but they definitely do work with leaders. And so
Sure.
they are very aware that they're working in a ministry context, working with us. And I've been slowly working it through the different regions in the partnership that we have made kind of known to the Vineyard. Every A&D is taking 3 regions at a time and working with them.
Yep.
So I've had the opportunity so far to work with 3 different regions and then starting 3 more as of just a little bit ago, maybe about a week ago. And I've had about 150 pastors participate in this pastoral health assessment. It is completely anonymous. The Vineyard bought these assessments for every pastor in the Vineyard, including lead pastor spouses, which I felt like was very important as a resource to be able to give. And so far, we've had about 150 pastors respond and take this assessment, and I hope many more in this next partnership, and then the third one coming out of that. The more we can get people to participate in this, the more data that we can collect. Now, this is completely anonymous. We don't know about pastor in Oklahoma or, Iowa that takes this assessment. This is very private. They meet with a coach through Vitalization Wellness to go over the results of their assessment. It's very similar to a yearly doctor's appointment, and just coming in and just taking their temperature and trying to figure out how they're doing. The thing that I do appreciate about the coaching element coming out of it would be that it's meant to be very, very encouraging. So any pastor that comes in feeling a little nervous, it's meant to be very encouraging. Like, these are the things that are going really well. And here's a little bit of a push for you to take a next step.
Yeah, it's forward-leaning.
It's very forward-leaning.
It's not just like, invasive for no reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Or
okay.
meant to induce any type of shame in any way.
So to what did this show? Like,
we're starting to see, and I'm very careful about this because they need a minimum
I know,
number
it's not
of,
definitive, blah, blah, blah. But what is it? What do you see?
Well, we're starting to see some trends. So on the more positive end, the areas that our pastors are feeling fairly confident in would be the spiritual health piece.
Okay.
So, which is great. I mean, we have.
So, but wait. So, time out.
Yes.
So, pastors are personally reporting.
Yes,
I'm so spiritually healthy. Okay, great.
Yes, this is all personally reporting.
Sure. Yeah. Which has its own drawbacks, but at least at least we know how people see themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're feeling fairly confident in that, and
great.
And then we move kind of through. We've got that middle area where maybe people, are starting to feel maybe a little less confident with their financial health or their organizational health. Mm-hmm. And then we go all the way to the very end, and the areas of emotional health, which we can talk about in just a moment, and physical health, which oftentimes people separate that from the spiritual health conversation.
Sure.
But I think it's very, very integrated, or it should be very integrated into that conversation. It's very, very important. So looking at the initial data from around our 150 pastors has given my team a very clear idea of what to start to work on.
What is it? What is it? Don't bury the lead. To get to where we're at.
One of the things that we've been working on in the last few months that I feel very personally proud of is that we are beta testing a physical health formation cohort. Now, the reason that I emphasize that is because any type of work that we're doing has to be so deeply embedded in the formation, like spiritual formation, like are we becoming more like Jesus? But to emphasize or to be able to concentrate on certain areas feels very important. So
certain areas being physical health.
Well, that would be a great example. So physical health cohort. So working within the partnership, we made that this in its beta. So it means it's kind of under the radar. We're just trying to test out and we're trying to form some curriculum right now. And this physical cohort had 12 men and women, older pastors and younger pastors, sign up very quickly to be a part of this 9-month cohort, surrounded by nutritionists and
wait, back up.
Trainers.
Just hold on.
Yes,
We're getting in the weeds.
Yes.
So you are doing this because of the survey. So back to the survey. Stay there for just a second. So
yes.
The survey seemed to report that a lot of people were like, I don't feel physically
good.
fit.
I don't feel good.
Okay,
I'm not feeling as confident as I know that I could be.
Yeah, so before we get into all those solutions.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Spiritual health, man, we're great. Physical health, I'm not so great. That was one of the
things that we were noticing. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What were the other? Just stay on the survey for a second.
Oh, okay. The survey. So the different areas of organizational health, which is interesting.
Organizational health means my own email management, my schedule. What does that mean?
I think it means the clarity that a person has based around their own personal values and does their life and the organization of their life, their priorities of the way that they spend their time.
So time, money, energy.
Do they match the values that they are holding on the inside?
And they're like, I actually don't know if I'm doing that super well.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? There's 6? Did you say there's 6?
I think there's around 8.
8, okay. But those were the key ones that you were like, woo.
That we were noticing.
Those are appearing. Okay. So all the way back to the physical one, because we were getting in the weeds.
Yes.
I wanted to. So you do the survey as one of the tools, plus you're reading the research. People are saying this is a big deal. So we do the physical well-being cohort. And quick shout out, this is one of the Lily helped things, right?
Yes, this is part of the work that's coming out of the sustainability grant that we got last year.
And so listen, just to pause, because not everybody knows, Lily is wildly generous.
Yes.
They're working with ministries all over the world, doing incredible work, and they've helped the Vineyard a lot for a lot of years.
Yes.
So, for what it's worth, if you have a family member or friend who works for Lily, you can thank them on behalf of the Vineyard. And they keep asking us to come back. So, hey, come back and apply for another grant because we really do want to be helpful. And so, for what it's worth, those have been incredible partners for us in a lot of different ways. And this is one of them. So anyway, just a pause.
Deeply
Super grateful for them. Yeah. And they've created a lot of different experiences that match, because when they give you a grant, they give you training and different kinds of ways to stay connected to greater work. So anyway, we're really impressed with them. So part of the sustainability grant, you have the cohort 12 and 12. Is that what you said? Or 6 and 6? Was it 12 men, 12 women?
No, it'd be 6 and 6 right now.
That's
and
right.
We have a waiting list.
Great. And so that's one of the things that you're going, hey, Vineyard pastors, here's the thing we're trying. And like with almost all of the grants, the goal is that we build this into a world, like a way that we behave as the Vineyard.
Yes.
So this is sort of them giving us the ability to start a thing, and then we can continue. Okay. So that's one. That's a good thing. That's a big thing. Do you want to finish?
I would,
Okay.
Because it's not necessarily about somebody losing weight, even though that might be a very significant thing for the way that they feel about themselves. The thing that I love to describe when thinking about this cohort is ultimately the whole goal of it is understanding God's ultimate design for somebody's body as they live out their calling. They live in this world with very real restrictions and very real story based around their gender and their race, their background, their trauma, all of the things that come together to influence the way that they're actually seeing themselves and their bodies. And so this is a great work of reconciliation for the person to be able to understand better how to care for their body. This could be as simple as understanding Sabbath and how to rest.
This isn't like
well.
we're just doing P90X or something.
Exactly.
It's a more comprehensive thing.
Now, we are providing access to different trainers and nutritionists and that sort of thing. That we're about ready to come up on a midway retreat where we are bringing in people to pray over these folks for some deeper healing. So anyways, I'm excited. It's very holistic. I'm very excited about the work that's being done in there.
And as you said, it's a waiting list. So let's just pause here 1 second and say, in the show notes there, you'll have the website that gives all the resources of different things we're talking about. So there's a way to sign up. There's a way to get on wait lists. There's ways to look at that. But let's assume somebody can't get in because they can't to that. They might be listening going, man, I really want that. I think it's on the website. What other kind of resource would you recommend?
There's a great book that we are enjoying right now that we are using her as a resource for this cohort. Her name is Tara Owens, and she has written a book, I believe it's called Embracing the Body.
Yeah.
And that book is really, really interesting. I think that could help somebody start to think about how real this issue is and have a better connection to how the body interacts with their spirituality. So that would be a great book to start with.
Great. That's good. Okay, good. So let's go back up the chart here for a second, because now we did physical health. You've got a lot of resources. That's what I really want to run with you. So it's in a sense, it's working some of your website, and some of these things are still in sort of a beta form. We're trying them out, some because of Lily, some because we're trying things. And honestly, we're doing that across the Vineyard in so many different ways. So, we could talk about what we're trying to figure out with ordination, or how we're thinking about justice and evangelism. There's a lot of ways, because that's kind of the phase we're in. So some of these things are beta as we talk about them, meaning they're newer or they might not have a ton of opportunity yet. But we're trying them out, then we can be able to move them across the country or maybe regionally or whatever. There's a bunch of ways to do that.
And I'm working with regional leaders. And so I'm asking them to identify what are the things that they're seeing within their region so that we can more accurately provide support and resourcing for the pastors. And it is really interesting. Every region really does have a different flavor to it. Totally. They have a different story. So I take that very seriously.
Are you saying that you think the United States is diverse? It is
yes,
diverse, isn't it?
It is very different, very
different. So shout out to regional leaders, by the way. If you're a Vineyard pastor, leader, and you haven't said thank you to your regional leader recently, you should. They do a lot of work for us. Good. And they really do. They're really faithful servants. So, okay, so let's start all the way up at, some of the things we've had to do or think about as a Vineyard as we're just sort of growing up into a new phase and stage of who we are, is managing crisis.
Yes.
So what you just said is like proactive and or healthier personal thinking, but some of the stuff we've had to deal with out of maybe some messes we've been in as the Vineyard as a whole, not just new to this moment, but across the board, we've not really had tons of crisis resources available. So talk through some of those. Like one of the things, of course, we started was a reporting structure where we can get help from the outside investigation. So talk about that. I mean, and you and I have both done some of that, so I could probably say some more too. But
definitely, we have a agreement with an organization called Guidepost Solutions. And what's interesting about what they bring is that, again, what you just said about them being an outside kind of look at the different crises that are happening within the Vineyard. They've been very helpful for us up to this point, setting up a hotline for people to be able to reach out, raise their hand when they know that there is something that has not worked or there's been no way to let somebody know about the different traumas or the different abuses or the things that they know that are not right.
Yep.
So that's been very helpful for us because Guidepost has come back and said, we will work providing different assessments or even different investigations, working with your regional leaders, your super regional leaders to provide next steps for healing and for reconciliation. So
to zoom out maybe just a smidge, we contacted them to do an overall institutional assessment. So for me personally, I was looking at the Vineyard as a whole saying, man, we've had a lot of history, 50 years. There's a lot of things that are a bit ambiguous. As we're making all these new structural changes, we could use some help from the outside. We've been getting tons of help, but get some more help from the outside. So they did an institutional assessment. They interviewed, I don't even know how many people, and they came back with a report. That report is online. And one of the funniest moments with them was saying, well, you're doing this because people have made complaints, right? It was like, no, nobody's made complaints. We want to get ahead of it. Because a lot of the stuff they do is they have to investigate things because there's been massive complaints. So anyway, they did this massive report for us. Here's your recommendations. We've been working through and implementing those recommendations. But one of those is we effectively have a hotline. So if you look on our website, Vineyard USA, you can report abuse, something you think has happened with a pastor, something you think has happened with a leader. You can just raise your hand and they come back to us in a trauma-informed way, and often won't even say specifically who it is right away, unless they have expressed permission. So they're helpful for us to document things, even if it's anonymous, because they might be able to see trends like, oh, you've had 50 churches say that this is a problem. Well, I can't tell you who any of them are, but here's a recommendation in light of that. Or, no, this is kind of a thing that person does want something to be done. We're going to work with a process for you to be able to do X, Y, and Z to make that right. So,
and I want to acknowledge that what is happening here and the people that are reaching out it is such a display of courage.
Yes.
We are very humbled every time somebody does that, especially as we watch the processes kind of play out. This is an incredibly culturally kind of brave thing to be able to do right now, especially as we are looking...
Culturally for the victim, you mean?
For the victim to have some safe spaces to be able to do that. But we're watching, well, let me go ahead and describe. Yeah, I mean, culturally, we're seeing people raise their hands all over the place, but they're doing it in such unsafe manners, I guess, or very public manners, or they don't. And so what we're trying to do is to provide some really clear next steps surrounded by, I think safety is like a really, really important word, because crisis and or when people are observing abuse or trauma or anything like that, it does shake you to the soul. It shakes you in your environment for your different situations, and safety can be something that is lost in the midst of all of that. So if we can build trust in the midst of these different investigations and or the follow-up that is sorely needed for many of them, that is a very, very good thing for an organization to take part in.
Well, yeah, and more than that, and I agree with you, it's just to have a third party, someone from the outside. So
to help.
Yes, and they can just give you a clean read, and it's more feasible for someone to trust someone from the outside. So anyway, we have a whole process. We review with them monthly. They raise their hand if it's something really urgent. So that's there. That's a big deal. That's a big move for us. And just 2 sentences really quick. If you're a Vineyard pastor, that might make you nervous. Oh, so there's a police department watching. And or aren't we in kind of a moment where people just make noise for no reason? Maybe. I understand that's a concern. I can just speak personally for me and for you, Danielle. I mean, I think it helps us feel a lot more at ease. I like having help. I like the fact that I'm accountable, not just to our trustees and to people personally, but also to an outside entity that can say, hey, Jay, I'm concerned about this or that, or here's some things we need to do to repair this. And so really it serves you as a leader to know that there's other people that are there to help you, because it can get emotional and you get confused. And so it's all to assist. That's the goal. And it's on behalf of people who are hurt, but it's also on behalf of leaders. It helps leaders not feel like, man, I'm flailing around trying to get things right, and no matter what I do, people are mad at me. Now you have a way. You have an outside group that's going to help you do that. So anyway, I've just found that to be very personally helpful, and I couldn't agree more. Okay, so then tell me about other things with Crisis. We have partners that we're contracting with.
Well, first of all, I want to say that crisis isn't something that is always self-induced. It can be happening to you. So
nearly always.
Exactly, right. Nearly always. And so to normalize crisis, I think is really important as well. Like to make that part of the conversation, like this will happen to you. It is a matter of how you are responding. And the amount of support that is around you that you can easily find accessible in your situation. So part of the work, even with Vitalization Wellness, which I mentioned just a minute ago with the assessment, but part of our agreement with them, because they do provide therapeutic resources and they've committed to the Vineyard, that they will work with any pastor wherever they live to be able to provide next step recommendations based on their situation.
Yeah.
That to me was very vitally important, because there's no way that I would know from my vantage point how to assist a pastor in the middle of Georgia for a marriage crisis, or in the middle of Southern California for a parenting situation. And so they are using their abilities and their contacts, their professional recommendations to be able to help pastors. And so that is something that we haven't really talked about.
When you give those examples, by the way, you're not referring to specific things.
No. That's
random.
just the first ones.
Just imagine. Okay.
Just imagine.
Great.
Denver.
Just in case
I don't even
somebody
know.
right now is like, is she talking about me?
No.
We're not talking about anyone specifically. That was just an illustration.
Exactly.
Okay,
so anyway, so that'd be
them.
something that they could reach out to me. We could definitely
do on the web.
On the web page, we can make an introduction to make that go as easily as possible. We do also have a list of different retreat centers. And this is very, very important to know that there are people that professionally do retreats for ministry leaders, for missionaries, for pastors and their families. And I felt like it was very, very important to be able to access maybe a few of them to recommend. Of course, there's more than what I'm recommending right now, but these are people that are bringing in professionals all around, counselors and therapists and prayer people, and it could be a week long, it could be 3 weeks long, depending on your circumstance. So there is a list of people that we can call the retreat centers that you can sign up for. They do cost a little bit of money, and so you would have to work within your own situation, with your boards, with your elders to make that happen, but might be some of the most important spaces that people have in the midst of crisis.
And then Pastor Serve, right?
Pastor Serve. So we have a couple organizations that we're working with as well, including Pastor Serve. If you've not heard of them, you should definitely look them up. Again, we have links to them. They started off doing crisis work where they're interacting with the pastor, with the boards, with the elder teams. They work with staff things because they know that it's not oftentimes a crisis just with the pastor, but there's influences, there's systems that are influenced. And like you said just a minute ago, crisis reveals the weakness and the gaps in the system. And we've seen that in our own lives. It reveals the gaps, and there's great opportunity to be able to learn. So Pastor Serve comes in with great levels of support in that.
Yeah.
Now, they're moving into more proactive kind of spaces of coaching and all of that. So I think they're a great resource. So
That's
definitely
good.
check them out. There's somebody that I'm talking about a lot with pastors.
Great. And then, so now we talked about physical health, some of the ways we're thinking systemically with Vineyard USA on behalf of Vineyards.
Yes.
Then also, within crisis that happens in church. With physical health, we've got some cohorts we're trying to build there, some resources. One of the main ways we see pastors get tripped up is financially.
Yes.
They've not had financial planning. By and large, this is where it's going to get a little dark for a second, but by and large, there was a generation of Vineyard pastors that were operating under an eschatological framework that Jesus was coming back any second. So retirement was faithlessness or whatever. And so they didn't have retirement plans and maybe even opted out of Social Security. And so now they're trying to retire with no retirement, no Social Security. And if you've not done the research on this, they might not even have Medicare benefits if they did not put in their quarters. So, in that sense, it's pretty intense. That's on the retirement side. But even in just the day-to-day, like a lot of pastors, how do I advocate for my salary? What are the rules? How does that make sense based on the size of my church? So how are you thinking about financial health for pastors? What are the kinds of things we're trying to help people think about?
Well, first of all, again, to emphasize the point that I made a minute ago, we need to normalize these conversations and
Yes.
because there's so much shame around them. Like even when I was talking about the physical body and the health and the way that you are feeling about your own self.
Yeah,
like
you feel
shame,
embarrassed.
Oh,
Right.
you feel embarrassed and shame sets in. And the same goes for our financial situations. And so when
Right.
we have done even a little bit of research on the actual circumstance that Vineyard pastors find themselves in, their families, we're finding out a lot of different things. We found out that our bivocational number or co-vocational number of pastors is very high, even more so than other denominations that might have more stable ways to pay pastors. So, we're looking at, in the 45 to 50%, and that wasn't even with all the pastors responding to our survey. So that is a significant number that we need to acknowledge of pastors and the unique circumstances that are what they're going into. Now, they might be choosing by vocation as a calling and what they feel like God has asked them to do. Some are doing it because they actually need to and they can't pay the bills if they don't. Some are very reliant on spouse salaries. So there's a lot of different challenges in here. And I've had a lot of space to be able to talk about this in the Vineyard. I'm very excited that more and more people are aware that we have built some cohorts, some 2-year cohorts, again, funded by a Lilly grant that is a 5-year Lilly grant. And I'm very excited to say that we have potential to be able to influence 110 pastor couples now, or pastor families. That is not everybody in the Vineyard, so not everyone's going to get this opportunity, but we are already thinking of ways to bring this even beyond the grant opportunities that we've had. So,
which is the goal, right?
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
single thing we do,
Yes.
Lily's getting us started. Then we're building material,
Yes.
we're building pathways, we're building coaches. And then hopefully we can manage that forever. Depending on how it works,
Yes.
which maybe as we're training pastors or we help them when they're in a pinch or as a part of a review process or whatever, we can help.
Yes.
So we have those cohorts and those are still running.
We have 2 currently running right now and about 55 couples.
It's great.
If they're married. A part of that, the first year focuses in on personal health and then the second one on congregational financial
Great.
health, which is interesting because not many pastors are trained on how to think about finances for their church.
I'm amazed how many
Right.
pastors have never even done a talk on giving.
No.
Like they've never done one talk one time, and they're just sort of hoping people know how to do that. And so even some resources by which we give sermon series or
Yes.
one-off sermons or basic frameworks for how a board might help with that. So anyway, we're building all kinds of resources. So
We have an opportunity for one more cohort within this Lilly world.
okay,
So that one would start early next year. So if you're still interested, we have 40 spots.
early 25.
Early 25.
Great.
Probably around March, I'm thinking, is when we're launching our 3rd cohort. We have a lot of spots open. So
Great.
we are right now currently recruiting. You have to go through an application process to make sure
if
that
you're
you
a vineyard
fit.
pastor.
If you're a vineyard lead pastor.
Great.
Now, the thing that's coming out of the work that we're doing is that we're having a lot of staff pastors raise their hand going, oh my God, how can I access this? Like, I want to be able to learn as well. And we are doing some free micro cohorts starting early next year.
Great.
They'll be much smaller, but they're going to be, again, hopefully that shot of adrenaline for the pastor on staff to keep learning as well.
Well, and the testimonies are amazing. I mean, people
They are amazing.
Getting out of debt, people realigning some of how they get paid even. Like I'd rather be paid like this than like that in order to fill in the blank.
Oh, I mean, we're providing research, like national research, like this is around an average. And can we help you with conversations with your board and or your elder team? I had a woman grab me. This is so fun. I had a woman grab me earlier this year. And she was so excited because she was part of the cohort and she knew that her daughter's wedding was coming up. And her husband had no way to pay for it. I mean, we know that weddings are so expensive, or they can be very expensive. And because of some of the disciplines that she was learning and the handle on their budget, they were able to pay for their daughter's wedding with like a lot of peace.
Wow.
So it's things like that that make me very, very excited. We're watching debt be lowered by hundreds of thousands of dollars just by people having a greater understanding. And we're watching savings go up. And a requirement of the program is that we have everybody have a retirement account. I mean, that is a non-negotiable. Like, we have got to be better prepared. My hope and my goal would be that every vineyard pastor, no matter if you're in this cohort or not, would have a retirement account that they are actively giving into, that they would also have a savings account that could help them prevent from dipping into debt. We understand that that can be very hard to do, but we want to do our best to be able to help people prevent accumulating debt, and that also they would make a livable wage, that over the course of time that there would be a few different things that they could participate in to make it so that they could have a livable wage and aren't worried about how to feed their family. So,
and the church should have a process by which that gets evaluated, right? That's not just a pastor
like
sitting by themselves with a pen and paper, right? It's like, no, we have a board that knows how to do this, and they're assisted by Vineyard USA.
And that is part of the work that we are doing in this cohort, by the way.
Well, and some of the work we're doing, even as we move toward ordination, it gives us access to talk to boards about how can we be more helpful to you? Because by and large, boards want to do a good job, right? They want to help. They don't know, but if they're not been trained, and it feels weird for a pastor to train them in how they should relate to their pastor. So that's part of our job, is to be helpful to that. Okay, so a couple other partners. We have some external partners that help us.
Okay, so we have been in conversations with some big organizations like Thrivent. I'm sure that you've seen their commercials on TV. They have been extraordinarily open to being able to work with the Vineyard. So that is a great next step, especially if you want just kind of basic budgeting. They offer 3 to 6 kind of classes that are free to people with financial coaches. AG Financial has been a great recent connect. And so I'm looking very much forward to the continuing partner with that. And even like an MMBB that is very historic in the body of Christ. I've had great conversations with them as well. So there's a lot of space right here to be able to learn.
What kind of stuff are they going to do?
They're doing everything from helping people just with the normal kind of budgeting and saving. They can help people set up retirement accounts. They can help them with investing if they're at that space to understand what to do with their money if they have. And granted, not every vineyard pastor is like struggling. I mean, we might have some people that have come into inheritance and they need to understand how to steward their money. They've got some people that are willing to help with that. AG Financial specifically can help churches with loans as well. So, and that is a very big resource for our pastors to be able to access and understand. So anyways, we've got a lot of really interesting financial partners, but tell us a little bit. Oh, and Clergy Advantage, that would be another one that forgive me for not mentioning that. Clergy Advantage has been great for us personally.
Yeah, it has.
We've loved that even in our local environment. They bring so much peace to us. Every time we meet with them, they can help us with our taxes. That would be another big thing. They are tax specialists for clergy. They can help you navigate all that complex world about housing allowance, which can feel very, very confusing for people. And they can help you save money by, taking different deductions, throughout the year. So anyways, we have a lot of different resources for that and a world that we are building. I'm very excited about this because when we took on the project, many years ago now, it'd be about 3 years ago now, we knew that this is a multi-year process to be able to change culture in the Vineyard around finances.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward, because even in the 3 years that we've done this, we've greater understanding the situations, and we're providing some really, really interesting next steps, and we have a long way to go, but we're getting traction.
If you're interested in more of the work Vineyard USA is doing to promote healthy pastors and leaders, we'd encourage you to check out the Pastoral Health Information page on our website. Go to vineyardusa.org/pastoral health to learn about resources, upcoming cohorts, and support from the Vineyard USA team.
If you're a leader in a church, you're a pastor, listen to us right now. You cannot assume you know what you're doing if you're not getting help. There's probably ways to get help that you're not aware of. So if you're a pastor, you should just forward this to your board right now. Just hit, hey guys, listen to this. Here's some things. Here's some ways that we're trying to help, and here's some ways that maybe you could jump in and help me as a leader. If you're a board member, you can grab your pastor and speak to her, speak to him, say, hey, listen, I heard this thing Vineyard USA is doing. How do we get in on that? Or I want to make sure you're taking advantage of these. And if you're not a board or a pastor, you're just listening, you care about your church, you're allowed to raise your hand as a person in a church and say, hey, are you on our board? I don't know if you know this. Vineyard USA is doing some things you might want to look into. Because, again, there's so much shame. There's so much concern people have about these things. So it would only help to let people know. Okay, so last one, free will.
Yes.
In the financial area. Free Will is a group that we've contracted with that will help you reach to your church and give people ways to think about end of life and give them all the different kinds of paperwork they need. They'll help them file all that stuff. Vineyard USA's contracted that, so it's free to you as a Vineyard church. Part of the deal, of course, if you're not doing the math on this, is the little funny phrase in development is that people are never more generous than when they're dead. So
goodness, I've never heard that.
It's true. It's just true, right?
It is true.
You're like,
it is true.
Hey, I'll be gone. So people, realize that it's unwise to just hand money to your kids, especially if you have a lot of money. Just go and look at how Warren Buffett has talked about or thought about that. You don't want to hurt your kids by giving them just a blank check. There's ways to do disbursements. There's ways to manage that in a really thoughtful way. And there's also a way to be generous. How out of my estate do I want to think about my church? That's part of the reason why, as a pastor, you want to work with Vineyard USA and work with Free Will. Because one of the things they're going to say is, as they go through all the things, there's no pressure. It's not high pressure sale. But how much would you like to give to your church? And of course, because Vineyard USA is helping, they're probably going to say, would you like to give the Vineyard USA out of your estate? Now, when you look at large denominations over multiple generations, the things that change the game for denominations over time are gifts that are given from people's estates. That's what changes the game. If someone gives 10% of their estate, just think about this for a second. If every Vineyard person gave 10% from their estate, everyone attends a Vineyard. They gave 5% to their local church, 5% to Vineyard USA upon their death. Guys, we are talking about somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how much money we're talking about, which enables us to continue to plant churches, do missions, ... So Free Will's there. It's a way that you can participate. We're moving region by region, so you might jump the gun if you try to reach to us. There's a way we're doing that. But we would love to hear from you. And especially if you're a pastor, you're a board member, this is a service Free Will do for your people. So all you have to do is announce it. You get people to sign up. They do it by way of Zoom. In certain instances, they might even show up to do some of this work with you. We've already done that for Vineyard USA because, frankly, we think it'll serve the health of every Vineyard church as well as Vineyard USA. So Is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, there's a lot of people that don't have wills. There's some current research that's coming out saying it's about retirement and wills. So this is it's uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people because they don't want to think. It can be, and I think traditionally it has been, but I think just even culturally thinking about death and that sort of thing. But again, we're trying to normalize conversation, saying this is very, very helpful for us to talk about.
Well, and to be a little bit more pastoral for a second, that was kind of technical. To be more pastoral, if anyone listening has done a funeral.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't even about money. Like, if you haven't done end-of-life stuff, all you're guaranteeing is that your kids are going to fight. That's what you're guaranteeing. Somebody's got to figure out what we're going to do with grandma's jewelry. Someone has to figure out what are we going to do with the one painting that Dad got from that one trip to wherever. And everybody fights about it. So even if you don't have any money, okay, like you're like, man, what would my end of life thing be? I don't have anything. Well, whatever you have, your kids and or your aunts and uncles and or your parents, your brothers and sisters are going to have to manage. Might as well do that for their sake, to bring peace to your family.
Amen.
Just do it so that you can save them some of the drama. Because if you don't, again, any pastor who's done this, the state comes in and starts to grab stuff up. And you got to figure out how to manage the state now. So on top of planning a funeral, on top of trying to manage their own grief, on top of manage whatever conflict might exist in your family system, they're going to have to figure out what to do with your estate. And I got to tell you, it's hard work. It's not easy. You got lawyers, you've got forms. If you do that work ahead of time, at the very least, you're offering them some level of peace. So would really recommend you jump into that. Try that. Hit that on our website. All right. So let's pivot to relational health. So we've talked about a lot of things, but let's pivot. So there's a lot of resources around relational health because things go wrong relationally in ministry, it turns out.
Do they really?
Yeah, it turns out. We're just being a human, honestly, not just a ministry.
Very true.
We've been thinking about some marriage and parenting kinds of things. What do you want to say about that?
Well, it's on my radar. I mean, I felt like the Lord has been very clear with me that this is a very necessary part of support that we need to offer our leaders. And it really is a coming. I've got a few different things in the fire right now.
It's a coming?
It is a coming. It is a coming. I got plans.
Okay.
I just want to tell people, to tease them, to tell them some stuff is coming. Because I do think that for leaders, we're working hard in our own churches to provide some safe spaces for them to process relational things such as marriage and friendship and, how to be a leader and that sort of thing. But we don't oftentimes have that space for ourselves. So I'm wanting to build this very, very intentionally. So
okay. So there'd be maybe marriage assessments, some parenting resources, seminars, whatever. And then we've been working with and talking to a lot of different folks that do relational conflict resolution, training, conciliation, and then maybe even mediation. So we're building pathways to do some training for that work with pastors, specifically our leaders, to get that work done. And then to be able to help churches get that work done, maybe at the least at the regional level, if not at the local church level.
Yes.
So that's coming soon too. You and I both read a book that we've appreciated. I think technically I recommended it to you.
You did.
As a side note, but Sustaining Ministry.
That counts. I'm glad you.
Well, it's just facts, really. Sustaining Ministry. And the first few chapters are worth the book, honestly, where it just basically outlines how many different roles we can have. And it's been leading me and you to ask some different kinds of questions about what does it mean that we're a pastor, but then we're also a friend, but then we're a boss, but then we're maybe a mentor. We're all kinds of different roles in people's lives. Is that basically what was most helpful to you? Why do you think that's a good resource to recommend?
Well, it was. And I think that I can't remember which chapter, maybe the 4th chapter or something. It was talking about clarifying roles with other humans that are sitting across from you because it gets so complicated. They don't know who they're talking to. Sometimes you don't understand. I've been in pastoral situations where I'm like, I have a friend hat on and I have a pastor hat on, and then I'm trying to pretend to be a therapist, and I'm not really a therapist. And
I'm a boss, maybe.
A boss, and it's confusing. If it's confusing for yourself, then it's definitely confusing for the person sitting across from you. And so those are the different kind of landmines and those tripwires that we oftentimes walk through. And the relational piece of health and of all the different obstacles that we walk through is incredibly wearing for human beings. It's meant to be very life-giving and such a precious part of our lives, but we don't oftentimes see that because it's so painful. It's very, very hurtful. We have all this unresolved stuff. So anyways, this is very, very important to talk about. We're going to continue, again, like you said, to provide some different resourcing and work it into our training of our leaders so that it is coming through our whole entire leadership system.
How power dynamics work, even if, just a small musing on that.
Please.
Is, in the Vineyard, a lot of the ways that we've trained people to do ministry is to act like those barriers don't exist. So I'm just a fat man trying to get to heaven. Or our relational style of preaching and leading. And it's weird, then the person that opened God's word is the person who's then playing basketball with you and your friends, and then is hanging out at your kid's birthday party, but then is confronting you about your marriage. That he's, that's a lot. It's hard to know what's what. And I don't know if we've trained people to think adequately through those categories. So anyway, that'll be good work to keep leaning in on. Well, similar, but not the exact same, is emotional health. So what have you been working on that helps pastors, leaders, or are tools for our leaders with emotional health?
I am really excited about a ministry kind of curriculum coaching world called Emotionally Focused that you and I have had working within our own local environment for a very long time. I can't even think how many years, maybe 10 years now.
Yeah, something like that.
And our private conversations have been like, this is actually one of the most discipleship-oriented, kind of successful thing that we've run in our own church. It's a mixture of emotional health and spiritual formation and family of origin work.
And mission.
Mission's
the key.
All leading to mission.
Yeah.
So thank you for adding that. So it's been a real privilege to be able to share that with our friends in ministry over the years and see how that affects their own churches and their areas and their regions. And then I have the privilege of being able to bring that internally for Vineyard USA. And so we are offering that online. We are offering that through hub churches in different regions. Those would be churches that have run this type of in these intensives and material, many times they feel comfortable with it. There's coaching that comes out of it. So it's not just a one-time weekend experience where your eyes are open to all these different things that you're needing to learn about. But you've got some people to walk with you for the next 6 months, and you have opportunities to keep learning deeper and deeper things about your family of origin work. So anyways, I'm excited about that. We're going to make that more and more accessible, especially into this new year. We've just been trying to get our systems in order, but a lot of different ways that you can get involved. You can find that on the pastoral resource page that, again, we're going to be linking in. So lots of different ways to be involved in that. So.
Yeah, and very likely someone in your region or nearby is going to be running some version of that. So we are getting those in more and more regional contexts, and there's coaching and an experience, all kinds of things. But then you also have external partner friends. So we have a few friends that we work with that are helping us with coaching and different kinds of things.
We do. So many of you have heard of Capable Life, and the founder of that would be Steve Cuss. He's a personal friend, a dear friend here in the area in Colorado. And he has taken so much of the work of Emotionally Focused, or what was known as faith walking. He's taken that and deepened the work, created an organization. He has a lot of different cohorts and coaching coming out of that. And I know a lot of Vineyard folks that are really blessed by it, listening to his podcast and all of the things, his books.
Managing Leadership Anxiety. Great book.
So good.
Yep.
He even came to an LTM, like a leadership meeting that we had a couple years ago.
Yep.
And then some folks are very familiar with Leader's Journey as well, which would be Jim Harrington, Tricia Taylor. They do a lot of personal coaching for leaders and their organizations. And so they've been very, very helpful and been friends of the Vineyard.
That's true. And then any number of books we can talk about.
What do you recommend? What are you reading right now that you're enjoying? Because we love talking about this stuff.
We do. I mean, in the family systems world, I mean, I really like Jenny Brown's work. I mean, she wrote a book called Growing Yourself Up. I think it's very readable. Also very readable would be Roberta Gilbert's book, Extraordinary Relationships. And that's part of 5 different books she writes. I think that's the most readable one if you want one where you think about parenting. In that series, Roberta Gilbert wrote a book called Connecting with Her Children. They're all really good. I mean, they push you, they challenge you. I mean, people are most familiar with Friedman's work in Failure of Nerve.
I love that book.
Yeah, I find it to not be his best book, personally. For those who don't know, he died while writing that book. So the last bit of that book, I think the last half, was written for him. And it feels like that to me. The book doesn't quite read the right way to me. It's a good book, though. People really like it. I think Generation to Generation is Friedman's best stuff.
That's
if you're in
really,
ministry.
really good.
I just think it's locked down, great stuff. And then more entertaining but very challenging, Friedman's Fables are the best in that.
We talk about those all the time
because
over our
they're
dinner
really,
table.
really, really good. Yeah.
I will never forget sitting across the dinner table with our 2 girls that were younger at the time and using those fables to talk about a current situation that was happening with us and having our girls kind of guess at the ending. And it was good. It was such a different way of learning.
Really, really good reading and fun read. That one's
fun.
the easiest reading and it's challenging. So anyway, those are all really helpful. Okay, last category, and then we're going to let everybody go. Spiritual health resources. So we've done physical, emotional, relational, financial. We're all the way to spiritual health, which according to Vineyards, we don't need. They're all very spiritually healthy.
No.
But
we are
but
pastors
just in case they might need help.
Oh my goodness.
What kinds of tools, training, what are we doing?
No, let me just say again, they were the most confident in this area.
I'm teasing,
yes.
Obviously. But.
I just feel very clearly that we have to keep providing spaces where people can be learning and growing in their life with Christ. So intimately connected, they have got the disciplines, that they're trying on, that they're practicing, that they have rhythms in their life that are working. And so these spiritual health resources are very vital, not only to our profession, but to our calling. And so we've got some spiritual health cohorts that are, again, in kind of a beta stage that will walk a ministry leader through about a 9-month community where they're trying on different things, they're learning. I think it's great. The work that I'm doing currently right now with regions in the partnership with pastors and ministry leaders is fun because I'm using the language of rule of life, or some other people would say rhythm of life. That is a very historical term in our Christian faith, probably going back to what Saint Benedict in the 5th century, where he identified, we just need different ways of being able to live that are clear, that are committed not only to God, but to other human beings, just maybe a couple different practices. And so that's where that terminology of rule of life came about. And then we, in this kind of modern day, are reaching back over time and grabbing that, saying, we need that now. That was not something that was just in this first couple centuries, but we need that now because our culture is busy and frenetic. And so the work that I'm doing within our regions around rule of life is very simple. There's 3 different lessons. I've identified 3 different practices that I feel are very helpful for ministry leaders, such as Sabbath, such as silence and solitude and spiritual friendship. And so we are all committing to working on that together. I hope that even if you hear this, if you're one of those people that are learning this, that this kind of revives your commitment to that, because there's a lot of learning in that. Now, we also have something that I'm very excited about that has taken a couple years to sit with and determine really appropriate kind of next steps. And it would be the formation of a spiritual direction network in the Vineyard. A lot of people are being trained through all sorts of different spaces and institutions. And we are at the space in the Vineyard, or at the time in the Vineyard, that to make a network where we are understanding who has been trained in the Vineyard, calling them to what does it mean to be able to serve in the Vineyard? What are the different opportunities for them to be able to use these gifts for other human beings? I not only see it as a community that's being built, but a really great resource for people that want to understand and learn more about what spiritual direction is, because I think it is an incredibly potent and powerful gift to be able to offer the body of Christ.
Great. So also on the website. So if you're a spiritual director and or you're looking for spiritual direction, that's a resource. And then we have other partners as well here. So like, who do we have?
Well, let me just end with this. I mean, there's been a few different people that we've been working with more recently that I want to highlight. So Soul Shepherding, some of you have come across them in the sabbatical guides that I've been offering for the last couple of years. They just have a really interesting and kind of robust sabbatical guide. And as people are thinking about having a little bit of time off away from ministry, you don't have to be a ministry worker for it. I mean, it can be in all sorts of different walks of life. It helps prepare that time, whether it be conversations with a leadership team, conversations with your spouse, or even just how to think about using that time. It's very, very, very helpful. So you can find that online. Currently, I feel committed to paying for half of that. So if you want to grab that, go ahead and grab that.
You personally are going to pay for
well,
half of it?
no, not personally. With VUSA. I'm sorry.
So
I'm saying
USA
I is in, yes, representing VUSA.
Prepared to help pay for
we
half.
are. It is that important, and I think it's really good. So Soul Shepherding, what
are we paying for?
They're the actual guide.
Oh, the guide.
The guide.
We're not paying for their sabbatical.
No, we're not paying for their sabbatical.
I don't. You just got to be clear on these things.
Well, there are some interesting ways to pay for your sabbatical that we could talk about, but that's probably for another podcast.
Right. Okay.
Including some grants and that sort of thing. But yes, so they have a sabbatical guide. So many of you have heard of them through that. They've guest spoken at the national conference in different workshops, Bill and Christy Gaultier. They also have different retreats that you can attend if you would like to. They're giving us a special Vineyard discount if you do 2 or more retreats through them. They do everything from training spiritual directors. So, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things about soul shepherding. They have a psychological approach to spiritual formation. So they're using their backgrounds in psychology as well as formation. So I really enjoy them. Also, another organization that you're going to be hearing about more and more through a lot of personal relationship that I've been developing over the past couple years would be Leadership Transformations. Steve Macchia is the founder of that organization, deeply, deeply committed to the church and being able to support the church and leaders. They offer different cohorts based around spiritual formation learning, as well as training spiritual directors as well. I'm going to be working with them to do a couple workshops for the Vineyard and or even some of our spiritual directors. So definitely pay attention to that. We will be advertising that very, very soon, and you can sign up for that. That'll be fun.
Great. That's great. Well, there was a lot. So,
I know, that is a lot.
So that webpage has all kinds of things. And then, of course, this is setting us up for the next number of weeks, talking to, different kinds of experts that chime in on some of these different places. And so it should be a fun,
is it fun?
Fun, intense, and fun. I mean, because...
Stimulating, I think.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I like that. It's a good word. Stimulating. Yeah, because there's just a lot of things that we're all going through that we need help. So,
and I just want to say one thing is that even though we just presented a ton of different resources, it is still really important to just pause before the Lord and have Him speak to you about what it is that He is highlighting, the different relationship that He wants you to invest in. Not everything is going to be able to be tackled all at one time. Mm-hmm. So I want to just encourage the continued work of discernment in people's lives to be able to get really clear about the next step. So please don't be overwhelmed if you're hearing this. It's not meant to be overwhelmed. It might be for another day, or you might be hearing the exact right thing that you need to hear right now for the next step. And we want to help.
It's good. Thanks, Danielle.
As we celebrate our 50-year anniversary in the Vineyard, if you're interested in learning more about Vineyard history, there are plenty of resources for you. Check out our show notes for links to books, YouTube videos, and more to learn about Vineyard history and identity. And make sure to keep listening to the podcast this year for stories of Vineyard churches throughout the year.